Nigerian Senate is set to continue with the screening of the remaining ministerial nominees forwarded last week by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. On the screen now, we're seeing Dele Alake, who is a special advisor, of course, to the president, being screened there. So let's just listen to what's going on the floor of the Senate.
After the unfortunate annulment, we plunged into one of the very pernicious sections of our history in this country. And I was right in the middle of it, and I had a rare privilege and selective exposure to be part and participant observer of the entire scenario. Of course, we went into the struggle. I joined forces with all the Democrats of this country and those who are pushing for democracy to push out the military. We call them militocracy. They practiced militocracy at the time. And of course, as an editor of the publisher whose mandate was annulled, there was really no choice. And it wasn't just a professional thing. It was a passion for the best for this country that we all carried at the time. So, the present president of Nigeria, then a senator, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in the vanguard and the forefront of the struggle. Then a senator, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in the vanguard and the forefront of the struggle, the pro-democracy struggle of this country at that time. And I joined forces with him, and we started all the covert and overt operations to push out the military at the time. In fact, at some point, my office was shut for 2 years by the late Abacha, and we were on the streets. But we were undaunted because we were propelled by the conviction that there was a need to get our country on the path of progress, development, and democracy. So we shunned all sacrifices, pains of sacrifices, and all that. And at a point, the house of our president, now our president, was firebombed in Lagos. And those of us who were leg operatives of the entire Nadeco struggle were in jeopardy. Our houses were ransacked, we were chased, and at some point, guns were brandished at me between Ikeja Airport and the Concord Press. It was all over the news. It wasn't a covert thing at that time. And when the heat was too much, I also had to leave the country. And I was away and joined forces with those who were in exile, our current president, Professor Bolaji Akiyemi, Professor Wole Soyinka. The late Commodore Dan Suleiman was one of the people with us in London. That was when the London pro-democracy seed was sown by the pro-democracy activists at that time. And from there, we went to the US, and we were sowing the pro-democracy seed and carrying the fervor throughout the world. And for 5 years, without firing a single shot, we held the jugular of the military. And we succeeded, of course, with the cooperation, active cooperation, and sacrifices of those who were in Nigeria at the time to chase away the military. And here we are, today, by the grace of God, we have the democracy that we had all yearned for. Thank you very much.
Senator Salim Musa.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair, my respected distinguished colleagues, the nominee. First and foremost, I will congratulate you for being one of the best to be nominated. I have just few questions. One, the question has to do with the nation's image and the rebranding that we have thought has been going on for a long time. In the last 4 years that I have been in the Senate, I knew that the budget of Ministry of Information National Orientation Agency have been coming, and you will always see that they are talking about rebranding Nigeria, Nigeria's image. Nigeria's image is not only to brand it internationally, but even within Nigeria. So far, I can say that I have not seen much that we have achieved looking at the scenario of things in this country. We know that rebranding has to do with people, it has to do with governance, it has also to do with the cultural and the heritage that we do have. Tourism, investment, and what we will also be able to have to produce here, not only in terms of products, but even our attitude to export out of this country. If for any reason you happen to be in an office that require this country, you should be able to, as an expert, know where are the ills and how do we mitigate them. Instead of spending so much with the few resources, from the few resources we have. I will recall the former Minister of Information has mentioned that we are going digital. I can tell you 80% of Nigerians do not know what that digital transformation is. And a lot of billions of naira have so far been spent. If you happen to be in that position, what are the measures you are going to bring to mitigate that? And how can our passports be made to be respected by other nations? Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Yao Sahabi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Yao Sahabi Alhaji, representing Zamfaranos Senatorial District. Mr. Nominee, let me first of all congratulate you for coming this far in your chosen career and profession, which is journalism, I believe. Mr. Nominee, if I could recall, there was a bill that was brought into this chamber in the 9th Senate, which has to do with regulation and the supervision of social media. Some people were for this bill, while others were vehemently against it. Should this country be opportune to get you appointed by Mr. President as Minister of Information, how do you intend to reconcile these two positions? Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Cyril Fasui.
Good afternoon, Senate President sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues. My name is Cyril Fasui, Ekiti North, the fountain of knowledge. Standing before you is a nominee from this fountain of knowledge, a very loyal, dependable, and responsible ally of the current president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We call the nominee Ajiroba. The The meaning of Ajiroba is one that wakes to see the king. Standing before you is Ajiroba, Dele, Alake, very responsible, very dependable. We will open him up to any question you want to ask. Sorry. Because we know he's responsible and is intelligent, ready to answer any question. And without much ado, I want us to know that this Senate will do Mr. President a lot of good by approving his nomination to be one of the ministers of Nigeria. Thank you.
So in other words, the distinguished Senator Cyril Fasuyi from Ekiti. The Ekiti senators have no objection and they have no question to ask him. So in that case, let's concentrate on those who have questions that can enlighten Nigerians. Distinguished Senator Mongono.
Distinguished Senate President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohammed Tahir Munguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. Mr. Nominee, congratulations. I've gone through your resume and also the struggles you made towards actualization of the June 12th mandate. I want to equally recall with nostalgia that I am part and parcel of the activists as a young man and a member of the House of Representatives. The late Chief MKO Abiola recruited about 3 of us to go to Cyprus to represent Nigeria as true representative of the people, not to allow Shonekon to go there as the head of Nigeria, but being true representative of the people. He paid for our fees to go. In fact, I'm traveling out of the country for the first time, first class. That time, we went to Cyprus to represent Nigeria, but unfortunately, we could not be allowed to attend the venue of the conference. We are not admitted, and we came back to Nigeria, just to show that I am part and parcel of the struggle for the actualization of the June 12th mandate. Well, my question is, there is a need for paradigm shift towards value reorientation in this country. Value reorientation in the sense that there is a need to make, more especially our young ones, to be patriotic, to be nationalistic in their outlook and thinking, and to think Nigeria first, the value of discipline in all our national endeavors and what have you. And then the agency that is charged with the responsibility of carrying out that mandate is the National Orientation Agency. Throughout my stay in the House of Representatives, I was privileged to have a glance at the budget of the National Orientation Agency. And their budget is not enough to carry out such a very sensitive responsibility that they have been charged to undertake. So, parabencho, looking at your resume, if Mr. President, in his wisdom, deems it fit to assign you the Ministry of Information and National Orientation, what steps are you going to take towards having a paradigm shift for the purpose of value reorientation in this country? That is my question. Thank you.
The distinguished Senator Ningi.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central of Bauchi State. Let me welcome Mr. Dele Alake to this hallowed chamber. And I would like to say, personally, I thought Dele Alake is one of the very best appointee of this government, and I thought he is doing an excellent job in the villa. And for me, Dele Alake is a fresh breath of air. As a spokesman, I don't see him as an attack dog journalist, neither do I see him as a hawk. Mr. President, if I were the president of this nation, I would have allowed Dele Alake to continue to be his spokesman, but I am not the president, so I have no choice. Having said that, I would like to refer to you, Dele, to our Constitution, 1999 Constitution, as amended. Clause 88, sub A and B. And I would like to, by the leave of the Senate President, to quickly read through. Now it says, subject to the provision of the Constitution, each house of the National Assembly shall have powers by resolution published in its journal and in the Gazette of the Federal Government of the Federation to direct or cause to be directed on an investigation, one, on any matter, and the catchword is on any matter, all things with respect to which the powers to make laws, and then B, the conduct of affairs of any person, and the catchword there is any person, authority, ministry or government, department, charged or intended to be charged with the duty of or responsibility of. I quickly rise to make those, to call those phrases of the Constitution, because in the last 2 decades or so, particularly the minister of the government, and particularly the head of NDS, do not understand this, neither do they appreciate it, neither probably they don't know. So as someone who is going to attend to federal executive meetings, because of your knowledge, your disposition, what will you say about these particular clauses? Several times here, the National Assembly called on ministers, and here of NDS, some of them deliberately turned this thing down. As a matter of fact, they don't see themselves as being respectable to this institution. And that's why I take time to make it to you that it is important to address these matters once you are past here and then the president appoints you as a minister. So what do you take these things for? How do you understand it? That is the question.
Distinguished Senator Tambua.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, my colleagues, let me join my colleagues that have spoken earlier than me in congratulating Egbon Dele Alake for your nomination to serve as Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And from your narration and the rendition you gave us of your journey and struggles in the development of our democracy, I can see that you have, to some extent, shared struggle, political struggle, and ideals, and possibly even coming from the same camp with the immediate past Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. What would you do differently from Alhaji Lai Mohammed, assuming you are tasked with the portfolio of Minister of Information of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Thank you.
I hope the nominee is taking record of the questions. Distinguished Senator Ismaila Kawu.
Thank you, Mr. President, my dear respected colleague. I am Suleiman Abdurrahman Kawu Sumaila, representing Kano South Senatorial District. Mr. President, my dear colleague, I don't want to repeat myself, but I quite agree with the previous speakers congratulating the nominee, and thank you, Mr. President, of nominating one of the best hand, which I think he will, if he became the Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, more officially his area, he will add value to the Nigerian development or political development system. But I have a simple question to ask. Listening to you attentively and going through your resume, I cherish your struggle during June 12. Now, inshallah, you will be the member of Federal Executive Council soon. My only question or clarification, which I need from you, is how do you intend to what we perceive as injustice meted by our beloved Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa led and his vice presidential candidate, Chief Sylvester Ogu, who contested alongside with the MKO, late MKO Abiola in 1993. The last administration honored late Chief MKO Abiola and Babagana Kingibe was the highest national order, national honor of the land. But despite the contribution of Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa led and Chief Sylvester Ogu, who contested alongside with Abiola, although the vice presidential candidate of Chief Abiola abandoned the struggle, joined the military, but the last administration honored him with the second national honor of the land, abandoned Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa and Chief Sylvester Ogu. Will you support me if I propose a bill to the National Assembly to, as a member of Federal Executive Council, will you support us to address that? No, I know what I'm saying. I know what I'm saying. Will you support the proposal to address that injustice meted to us? I from Kano, who represent Alhaji Bashir Usman Topa, and of course our nationalist Chief Sylvester Ogu. Thank you.
The last question should have been directed to our colleagues in the Senate, that if a proposal relating to a bill comes up, whether our colleagues will support. But for national honors, he was from his narration, He was only in the June 12 struggle alongside the current president. He wasn't the prime mover of June 12 struggle. And he's not in a position to give anybody national honor. Senator Abiru.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, sitting as the chair, and my distinguished colleagues. First, I would like to congratulate the nominee, described as the Ajiroba, as described by my colleague, Senator Cyril Fasui. That's Ajiroba Dele Alake. I want to congratulate him on his nomination as a minister of the, as a potential minister of the Federal Republic. And I also want to say that I was very much engrossed with his sense of history when he was making his presentation, and I fully support his nomination as well. And I also like to thank the President of the Federal Republic for giving us one of the best that we can find in journalism, an accomplished personality that we have right in front of us. Now, having been part of history, particularly in the last 40 years, and the evolution of our democracy, even at the point where it was terminated, and of course, when it continued. What I would like to put across is for the nominee to share with us that how do we continue to protect and guard the democracy that has come to stay in Nigeria in particular. Nomination. Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues.
I haven't really seen serious questions yet, but so I will just allow just maybe two more, and then we can take him. I don't know right now with the leader, distinguished Senator Olare and Senator Abdul Fattah, and even Senator Sadiq. Looking at that order, I think the leader Ashiru should be allowed to speak on your behalf. So ask question on their behalf.
Mr. President, I'm Senator Ashiru, representing the good people of Kwara South. Mr. President, it's really refreshing having somebody like Mr. Alake as a nominee of Mr. President. And I want to start by saying that we are very grateful for him for giving you the honor to be part of his team. Coincidentally, Mr. Alake is a journalist, and it's very likely that he will take over Ministry of Information from my brother, the past Minister of Information. My concern really is that for a very long time, we have studied that Ministry of Information in most cases is a cost center. Most of the budget, they spend and spend and spend with little or no revenue. Even the NTA that was supposed to be rebranded has not been able to give us much in terms of competition with the private television station. Now I want to ask, your ministry will take over information, likelihood, if you are Minister of Information and Tourism. Tourism is a very large industry. And I believe that Nigeria as a nation, because of our peculiarity, because of our cultural value, because of our natural endowment, can survive on tourism. My senatorial district is an example. we have a lot of fantastic sites. The tallest waterfall in the whole of West Africa is in my senatorial district. We have a very large heritage, a museum, they say museum, which is a world-renowned museum. Equally too, we have a lot of shelter rocks and many interesting sites. I want to know if by law, by chance, you are in charge of this ministry, what are you going to bring to the table to make Nigeria earn money from tourism? Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Nominee, that is the first major serious question. It asked you on the area of tourism, and if you are given the opportunity in the Ministry of Information, what will you do to improve the internally generated revenue of this country through tourism because of the various tourist sites across the country? I think you should start from that answer, then you now go down to the rest.
Thank you, distinguished President of the Senate. Thank you, distinguished senators. Actually, I was following the pattern of the questions very meticulously, and in my trade, I'm a writer and I'm a journalist. When we write with inspiration and conviction, but we build our thoughts before we write, so that the thoughts will be logical, will be sequential. And that's why, Mr. President, distinguished senators, actually the issue of tourism in Nigeria, with due deference to the opinion of the Senate President, has been very difficult. It's not difficult in my own estimated view at all, and in my considered opinion. And this I say with all sense of responsibility, given my modest globally. We need to examine the factors that contribute to enhancing tourism in any milieu. What are those factors? The very first one is security. Adequate security. We cannot talk of any meaningful development of tourism without security. It is when there is security that the economic development flourishes. And tourism is a factor, if not a variable, of economic development. So holistically, security is a sine qua non for any kind of development in any sphere of a society. My distinguished senator who has a question did mention his area and the greatest or largest waterfall in West Africa. However, even for domestic tourists, there has to be peace of mind before you can decide to visit. Well, you must be fed adequately. You must have a means of livelihood. Before tourism is tertiary factor of economic development. It's not the primary for a human being. A human being who wants to go and visit the waterfall, who wants to go and watch animals, who wants to do tourism generally, see sites, historical sites, must have been a little bit fed. And there must be security of movement assured. Elsewhere in the world where people gravitate for tourism, there is a modicum of security. When you know that your lives and properties are secured, then you can go and watch animals in the bush. You can go to the Masai Mara in Kenya, into the Games Reserve, and watch animals and sleep in the bush because there is a feeling of security. So, distinguished senators, the first thing we must attack in enhancing tourism is internal national security. There is no running away from it. Of course, there is the value chain, the multiplier effect. Therefore, it affects virtually every area of our endeavor in this country. There are other factors, but I just don't want to waste your time. The most important, in my considered view, is security. I will hesitate before going anywhere to engage in tourism if I do not feel safe. And you agree with me, in the last several years, we've not had the best feeling of security. However, now we are having it. Yes, sir.
We have noted your concern on security. But if you are appointed a Minister of Information, and then we collectively, because security belongs to all, and we put our house in order, and the nation is secured, what are the initiatives you bring forward to enhance tourism, assuming we also have done something about security, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. I did say that there are other factors, but that the most important, which is the foundation, that's why I hammered on it. Now, when that foundation is laid, and we all know that when you are even building construction, once your foundation is solid, the rest is putting the building blocks. Now, those other factors are the building blocks. For instance, we need to put infrastructure around those tourism sites. It is important for any tourist, whether local or foreign, to have access even to the tourism sites. Take Ikogosi in Ekiti, for instance. If there is no very good access roads, it will be difficult for us to attract any. And let me also say here, Mr. President, that no matter the amount of advertisement and publicity you wrap around any other venture, if the most important ingredient of success for that venture is not treated, the advert and publicity, that's my time when our present governor was, present president was governor of Lagos State. I was his commissioner for information and strategy. And that is why we brought the issue of strategy into information management. It is not just information management per se. However, I'll come to that later. So if we are able to put in the right infrastructure, electricity, access roads, the personnel that will even service those tourism ventures, these are all important. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you that you've been all over the world to tourism sites. You've seen the courteous nature of the tourism personnel or the sites personnel. They need training. We have to bring training on board for all our tourism ventures and sites. We have to put in the infrastructure. Infrastructure is not just the roads. I also mentioned the electricity, even the structures, even those sites, the way we design the sites. There's one place in.
So, then you have mentioned the things that need to be done for tourism to work. But you have not mentioned the initiatives that you are going to bring to bear, because you are not the one that will do the infrastructure. You will propose those things to the Federal Executive Council. Please attempt to answer the question of distinguished Senator Tambua and distinguished Senator Nengi, if you noted them down, so that we can now look at your colleagues, no, not your colleagues, we can look at your senators from Ekiti, Adaramodu, and the Senate leader, so that way, yes, I noticed that if you notice the way I'm going, I would like a situation whereby we have a spread. So we have distinguished minority leader. Your protest is noted. Okay, so just answer the other questions from my colleagues. Distinguished Senator Nengi, distinguished Senator Tambua. Well, because if you notice, I attempted to go towards Ekiti, but most of the speeches coming from there are full of accolades instead of questions. So I'm more interested in those who have questions for him. He wants to answer questions. He wants to answer questions.
Mr. President, sir. Exactly. So I need to start from the beginning. Yes. You're talking to him. I want to address him. I don't know which ones they asked. Their names are not there.
Check the front.
I don't know which one Tambua asked. I just wrote the questions. Mr. Senate President, sir, I wrote down the questions. Yes, distinguished senators, the very first question by a senator from Niger State is on the national image of Nigeria, that what would we do differently if I happen to be in that ministry, and especially our foreign image and local image. Now, again, my answer is very simple. There is no foreign image that can be ever good that is not contingent on domestic policies anywhere in the world. However much we burnish our image, engaging public relations practitioners and all that, is all money down the drain. I will not recommend that for Mr. President. What I will recommend for the president of this country is to concentrate on good governance within Nigeria. And once there is good governance within Nigeria, once our domestic policies are positive and responsive and responsible, the image of Nigeria will naturally shoot up. It's a kind of interrelated. So we are not going to embark on wasting money on burnishing image, polishing our image, when the domestic situation of Nigeria is nothing home to write about. So the first thing I will recommend is that our domestic policies must be right and must be people-oriented at all times. Thank you. On the second one is the social media regulation. Yes, there is some concern, not just here but all over the world, but particularly in our own environment, about the pernicious nature of social media or effects. The social media has two sides. There is a positive side, there is a negative side, just like every human endeavor. Now, the positive side, we all know, if there's instant news, whatever happens, you get it immediately, and then you can propagate your information widely at a very short time. And other things, you communicate faster with social media. However, the downside is so detrimental to good and decent society. What I will support is the strengthening of regulations. In my time as a journalist and as an editor for 10 years unbroken in this country, I discovered that there are laws that guide our conduct in every area of human endeavor. But the application of these laws has been short. In fact, even victims of libel cases, of aspersions, of defamation and all kinds of negative things in the media hesitate to also apply the law against the culprits. I have been on the editor's chair for several years, and the most important point to an editor is to avoid litigation, but the receiving public may not know it. But the public would not also seize the opportunity of applying the full weight of the law when there is infraction by any medium, whether social media or newspaper or online or electronic. So I will recommend a strengthening of our regulations and application of those regulations. It is not just to enact laws, but the laws must also be tested. It is from testing that we know the weight, the efficacy, proficiency, and efficiency of those regulations. So that's the first thing I would do about social media, strengthening of the laws and application of those regulations. And I will support anything that comes from these hallowed chambers to promote that course of action. If there are laws, if there are motions, bills in line with this, please be sure of our full cooperation. Value or reorientation of our society. That is very, very weighty. And I agree with the distinguished senator that asked that question. In the days gone by, when some of us were very young and we were toddlers, we used to say that, we say these days that Nigeria had seen it better, it was better in our days and all of that. But Nigeria hasn't changed in terms of geography, in terms of nomenclature. The sun still rises in the east and sets in the west. So what has gone wrong? It is the character of the inhabitants of the nation called Nigeria that has changed tremendously. And how it is the value system that has been desecrated by successful generations. I will not say the government, the legislature, judiciary, no. It is us in totality as a society, as human beings. Because when we say leadership, we are all leaders at various levels, either at government level, in the executive, legislature, judiciary, even at the state level, local government, even at family levels, which is the most important unit of a society, the family unit. There's always a leader in the family. How has that leader inculcated the right values down the throats of the children? This is where we must start value reorientation from. It is not just regulations and laws. No, it is the attitude we bring to bear on it. So I will support serious attitudinal change. And we are going to, if I find myself in office that is responsible for value reorientation, the first thing that we will face is attitudinal change from top to bottom. Everybody. Executive obedience to legislative oversight, which was asked by the distinguished senator there. I believe in the separation of powers. I did not take part in the struggle for democracy for several years for nothing. Now that we have had the democracy, we must guard it jealously. One of the bases of guarding democracy jealously is strict adherence to rule of law and therefore separation of powers. When the legislature is saddled with the power to oversight or to perform oversight functions, all the other arms of government must necessarily obey. So I do not see, and I cannot justify how anybody in the executive will disobey calls from the legislature, either to explain something or to rub minds or to even exhaustively discuss issues concerning all of us. I am a strict adherent to the rule of law and the observance of the separation of powers. I support that fully. To Tofa and Ugo's national honors that a distinguished senator also asked.
Let me invite the minority leadership to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. President of the Senate, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, my name is Simon Mwatkon. I'm from Plateau State, and I represent Plateau North. Mr. Nominee, a lot of accolades have been showered on you, and from your CV, you have done incredibly well for Nigeria, especially the struggle for democracy. And I'm convinced virtually every senator here knows that. Seated as senators here, the issue of our political parties is secondary. We are senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I'm saying this because of the question I want to ask you. Therefore, any question coming from me should be taken that is coming from the senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not as a minority party senator. We all have equal status here. Like I did tell the Senate President, one day he may be seated here and I will be there. My question is that I heard you, sir. You said, as a writer or as a journalist or an image maker, you speak out of inspiration and conviction. You don't just say anything. You must have the inspiration and you must have been convinced that what you are saying is the right thing. You've talked about the social media too. I've read on social media, sir, your statement concerning other political parties during the election. I read a statement where you label supporters of a particular presidential candidate as wild dogs, buying blood on social media. Have you come across that statement? Are you aware of it? Did you say that? If you didn't say that, excuse me, sir. Please, let me say that. I've not.
The minority leader, two things. Number one, you say one day that you will come and sit here. And that I will come and sit there. But you have forgotten that I sat there before I came here. That's number one. Then number two, to try and avoid campaign issues. Campaigns are over. We are now in governance. That is why once you pass through that door, you are coming into the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And you started well by pointing out that you are not asking questions on behalf of political party or on behalf of minority or majority. You are asking questions as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That means your questions must be nationalistic and not partisan. So, but because of the fact that you are a leader, the chair continues to protect you. So go on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Secondly, sir, we know that... Yes, I'm asking another question. I've asked him whether it is true or not. So he is the one to answer, sir. Yeah, second question. The second question, sir. Second question. The first question is whether he said it or not. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Point of order.
Your mic. Oh.
Senator Muhammad Adamu Aleru is my name, representing Kebbi Central. Mr. President, Order 55, with your permission, I will read. When a senator is speaking, no senator may converse aloud or take any noise or make any noise or disturbance to interrupt him. Mr. President, there are so many interruptions, particularly from the other side. I want you to abstain this point of order so that there will be silence and decorum in the way you conduct the affairs of this chamber. Thank you.
The point of order is sustained. The leader of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Michael Okoyemi Bamidele, representing Ekiti Central. I have come under Order 12, Order 55 specifically, Order 12. And it's important that this is stated. No senator may interrupt another senator while speaking, unless, and that's my emphasis, unless 12A, to call attention to a point of order or privilege and suddenly arising. 2, to call attention to the want of a quorum. C, to call attention to the presence of stranger. D, to move a closure motion or to move that the business of the day be called on. Mr. President, the reason I also had to raise this point of order is that Order 55 from subsection 1 to 12 are clear as to the code, the mode of debate on the floor. And while a senator must be listened to in silence and no other senator must interrupt him, our order also, our rules have made arrangements or provisions for situations in which even a standing senator, a sitting senator, may be interrupted. That is stated in our rules. The issue at stake was that the minority leader was raising questions that bordered on campaign. This had happened several months ago. And if we are here as senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria screening ministerial nominees, we are not supposed to bring in issues that had come and gone. Political parties contest under tension. Thank you, sir.
The leader of the Senate, your point of order is upheld. The distinguished Senator Darlington Wokocha, you are to make your contribution. Please go ahead and make your contribution because you had raised your hand. You have another question? You have another question? Oh, if you have another question, please go ask very quickly because we have other nominees to take. Please ask quickly.
Mr. President, Mr. Nominee, sir, as somebody that will be the image maker if you are eventually appointed by Mr. President as Information Minister of this country. We know that out of patriotism, we are supposed to be conversant with our national anthem. Mr. President, if you allow me, I will ask the nominee to recite the second stanza of the national anthem. Thank you.
Yes, distinguished Senator Wokocha, not point of order, your contribution. Just ask the question, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. And dear colleagues, my name remains Darlington Nwokocha. I represent the entire Nigeria, but Abia Central in particular. Mr. Nominee, I want to welcome you to the floor, but I want to make some special reference to your resume. Page 5, item 5. Mr. President, may I read? The item 5 says that you introduced the first ever Bill of Freedom of Information in Nigeria into the Lagos House of Assembly and went as far as conducting the first ever public hearing on the bill in Nigeria in 2005. That's barely 18 years ago. But I want to make reference to a certain provision in the Constitution, which I want you to take to recognize perfectly well. You have been in the media and information and communication space for decades. You may very well be familiar with Section 22 of 1999 Constitution as amended of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to the fact that the press, the radio, television, and other agencies of the media shall at all times be free to hold government of the day to account for Nigerian people. We all witnessed how state authorities gagged some media organizations in the last administration. How would the press freedom, considering that 18 years ago what you did, be guaranteed at the national space?
I actually thought you were about to give us examples of what happened in the First and Second Republic, that there were public hearings. And then you would have challenged him. But thank you for agreeing with him. Distinguished colleagues, there is the leader.
Mr. President, contrary to expectation, my point of order is not by extension of time. I will do that in another 3 minutes. My point of order, sir, is Order 52, sub 4. And the reason it's important that I make this clear is that if I have your permission to read, sir, I would like to read, Mr. President. Order 52, sub 4. A senator must confine his observations to the subject under discussion and may not introduce matter irrelevant thereto. Mr. President, it's important that we know, and I want to say this with due respect to the minority leader. He has been wonderful as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and he has contributed very immensely to ensuring that proceedings on the floor have been meaningful. However, unfortunately, he appears to have brought politics into this thing by asking the nominee standing before us to recite any of the stanzas of the national anthem, which of course is a piece of cake. But because that had not been our tradition, and we have not done this to any of the other nominees, if I did not say this, I'm moving
that that question or request be expunged, because if it is not, and we rule that he will not recite it, it will look as if we had something to hide. It is irrelevant to the extent of the provisions of Order 52 sub 4, and I so move, Mr. President.
Your point of order, in fact, even if you ask me as the Senate President to recite the second stanza, I'll do it often. It is expected that every adult in Nigeria has the stanzas in his heart. Every adult. We are here to do serious business of how to move this country forward, and then to ask the nominees what they'll bring on the table to assist us to get out of the current cauldron. It is not necessarily to sing songs. So your point of order is sustained. Senator Jimikuta.
Mr. President, standing as the chair of the Committee of the Whole, my name is David Esu Jimkuta, representing the good people of Taraba South, Kororofa Kingdom. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, having gone through
Mr. President, I rise under Order 8, sub 3, to move for an extension of time to enable the Senate seat beyond 2.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that these proceedings be extended beyond 2 p.m. Those in support of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Yes, Senator Jimikuta. And immediately after Senator Jimikuta, I would like to end with Ekiti. So I'll go back to either Senator Adaramodo or the Senate leader. But the Senate leader has spoken enough. So Senator Adaramodo, after Senator Jimikuta, you say something, then he will answer so that we can go on to the next nominee.
Thank you, Mr. President. David Jimkuta, representing the good people of Taraba South, the headquarters of Kororofa Kingdom. Mr. President, having gone through his resume, I want to beg my distinguished colleague for the nominee to take a leave of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Adaramodo.
Thank you. Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair of the Committee of Whole. I'm Yemi Adaramodu, Senator from Ekiti South and from Ekiti State. In seconding the motion moved by my colleague, Senator Jim Kuta, that the nominee who has answered very seriously and positively and progressively the questions posed to him. Ordinarily, I'm from Ekiti State. Not only that I'm from Ekiti State, he's from the other constituency, which I even represent in these hallowed chambers, that is the media. And we can see him. He's a media legend, he's a media avatar. He has been on it for a very long time. And when we look at the resume, we will be convinced that it's going to do a human. And then we even say it, that the taste of the pudding is in the eating. In Lagos State, with our president, as he was then the governor of Lagos State, Mr. Dele was the mouth, he was the trumpet that made all the human, all the feats in Lagos State to be known by Nigerians. And if we give him a bigger trumpet, to blow in Nigeria in that wise is going to make Nigeria very proud, and is going to blow the feet to the world, to the global space. And finally, is from the land of honor, Ekiti State. Is an ambassador of honor, and is not going to renege on that. I will even put it to him that the National Orientation Agency must be revived, because gone were those days when we were hearing, if you are a teacher, teach well. If you are a worker, work well. If you are a driver, drive well. So the National Orientation Agency under you, I know that is going to grow more wings this time and fly our orientation to every nook and cranny of Nigeria. Mr. President, we are very grateful from Ekiti State, and we are happy with his nomination and his screening today. And we are very sure that this hallowed chamber is going to confirm him to become a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
So, Mr. Nominee, Ekiti has spoken, and nobody can say that Ekiti has been marginalized in the proceedings. So Ekiti has been marginalized in the proceedings. So, but there are still a few questions that you were itching to answer before you take leave of the Senate. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Senate President. The question which was asked from that side of the chambers on freedom did a little bit, really touched me. And the man did a little bit of research, the distinguished senator, going back to 2005, when I was the first to bring a bill of Freedom of Information Act into the Lagos State House of Assembly, and did a public hearing, and it's all on record. And that exactly signposts my own deep convictions about press freedom in this country. Having been a practitioner, I am still a practitioner, because we have an aphorism in journalism that once a reporter, you are a reporter for life. And so I remain a reporter. And so the ideals, the tenets, the principles, the norms, and the mores of that profession, I am one of those who uphold it, who will uphold it assiduously with every sinew in my veins to make sure that press freedom is sustained in this country. However, to every privilege, there are responsibilities. I am not advocating an absolute press freedom without responsibilities. And I had a cause to say to some group of media men just a few days back that those of us who are gatekeepers, editors, managing directors, and all that, the gatekeepers have an onus on them. It behoves on them to regulate whatever comes out for the sanity of our society, because information is power. When information is irresponsibly purveyed, it can lead to cataclysmic events and destruction, chaos, social anomie in the society. So I am very, very vehement on responsibility aspect of the press, and I will uphold it to the very last atom of my breath. Thank you.
I love to say Dele, Alake. We have watched you over the years. We don't have any doubts about your capacity to handle any portfolio that your boss and our dear president may decide to endow you with. So we are happy with the enlightenment that you have received from the Senate and the enlightenment that you have also given to us. You may now take leave of the Senate.